So what were the main effects that you noticed after the initial injection?
Before I went to Roatan, my bench was only like 185. Within 3 weeks, I was pushing 265. And the highest I hit was right around the 80-day mark. I was able to pump like 315 for 3.
It starts with just taking that leap.
Man, you have to work hard. You have to be incredibly smart.
Choose something that even if it fails, you are going to be proud of it.
Doesn't matter how badly you got beaten in battle.
Be kind, be kind, be kind.
Become a better person, a better leader, the better business.
Go with your gut.
I'm Samuel Donner, and this is Finding Founders.
This is the real one this time?
Dylan has navigated through many unexpected twists and turns, transitioning from professional Super Smash Bros. Commentator to martial artist, and now a pioneering figure in the realm of biohacking. Through the follistatin gene therapy, Dylan not only experienced a physical transformation, but also a renewed sense of vitality. As he continues to fine-tune his body, Dylan's journey serves as an example for athletes seeking a safer, more sustainable path to peak performance.
My name is Dylan McGrath. I am a 31-year-old martial artist, MMA commentator, jiu-jitsu commentator. I do mostly that with my life, and then I'm also like a IT professional and pretty much normal, everyday normal
Just
motherfucker.
you're a normal dude.
Just an everyday normal guy, in the words of the great John LaJoie. So you know.
So like with like, I feel like any athlete taking themselves seriously and like the athletics seriously, I imagine there's a lot of like tuning that you do with your body, with both training and like supplements and regulating eating, stuff like that. So like, did you have any kind of stack that you developed as you got into jiu-jitsu, or was like there anything that either your diet, your supplements, your training that changed as you got into jiu-jitsu? And when did you get into it?
It's been like a constant evolution. So I was not always an athlete. Like as a kid, I didn't really get in with any sports at all. And then my mom got married to a new guy, like kind of halfway through my school career and around the time I was in middle school. And I formed like a bond with my stepbrother, and he was a super athlete. And because I wanted to be closer to him and hang out with him more, I decided to like pick up sports again. So I started playing football. I got injured in high school in a car accident.
What happened?
I was in an automobile accident involving an ambulance where it came through a four-way stop and someone else ran the four-way stop as the ambulance came through the red light. And to miss them, they swerved into my car, which was parked opposite side of the four-way. It's hard to describe without like a little diagram, but
the point is like
I was stopped.
You were stopped.
Yeah. And they hit the side of my car, messed up my shoulder, and that football was kind of over for me.
Sure.
Yeah, and I had no reason to be in school. I think we had talked about this previously, but I left school a year early to get my GED and start going to school immediately. I forgot all about athletics because my shoulder and my injury, I thought that I was just not going to be able to do those things.
I was like behind you.
Yeah, and I just started focusing on other hobbies. I was still super competitive and I was still like trying to do something. And the only thing that I had when I was injured was I was like the best person in my high school video game club at Smash Brothers. So I was like, okay, well, I wonder if that's a hobby you can have. And I found out about Super Smash Brothers, competitive play. I started with Brawl and I played Wario, probably because he's my favorite Nintendo character. But then as the time went on, I went to discover that I liked Melee the best. And so I played Marth for a really long time. And then I switched to Luigi. That was like when I was at my best, was when I was playing a lot of Luigi. But I became a professional commentator in that game.
Really?
And commentated like a lot of big tournaments and got to do a lot of like big events and big matches and meet a lot of super cool people.
And like also like Smash is like one of the like, I mean that like up with like Street Fighter, it's like one of the biggest competitive fighting games.
Particularly Melee because it's been around since 2001 and people are still discovering it for the first time right now as you and I are talking, right? And the community has like created all these resources for the game to like keep evolving in a way, like allowing new players to access it via online play and stuff like that. All of that's done by players. So it's been a big effort by the community to keep it going.
Yeah.
And it's still going, and it's still super big. And I was really fortunate to be not incredible at actually playing the game, but talking about the game.
Yeah.
Because when you're doing commentary for these events, you know, it's really like a big production. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like, I know you're a production guy, so there's just lighting rigs and
it's huge.
you know, there's the backdrops, and there's a dress code about what you can wear on camera and what you can't. Like, there's a production manager, there's a field director, there's PAs, there's all this stuff going on. And so it really like prepped me mentally to go into other things later in life after I found out about martial arts. Anyway, I tell all that story because I had like traveling the country doing this, focusing on playing Smash. I had like really let my health go over the years. And this was during this window of time, probably like 4 or 5 years is when I met Mac. Yeah. And
how old were you?
I think I was like 18 when I met Mac.
Yeah.
I moved to Raleigh at age 19. So this is quite a while ago. When I was that young, it wasn't a big deal that I was eating like a shitty diet and not working out because I was young and I had physical labor jobs.
Yeah.
So I was still like doing stuff.
Working out like a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. But as time went on and the years went on, even if I was working a really physical job, I'd still start to put on weight. And I just realized that I just let myself go. I think I had woken up one morning and I saw that the scale was like 360 something.
Wow.
And I was like, that's not right. So I immediately was like, well, what can I do? Because I never liked lifting the weights when I was on the football team. So I was like, well, I kind of like boxing. I did some boxing when I was a kid. I have a black belt in Shoto karate that I got when I was like 9. So it basically means fucking nothing. But I remembered liking something about that. So I started boxing. I started doing like a keto crash diet and training every day. And within like a year, I was down to like 210 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was
like
over
like 100 pounds.
Yeah. It's like a big change. And I did it like with no forethought into like the research or into like how that would affect my body. I just thought losing weight was good.
Yeah.
If I could expedite that process, then everything would be good. I'd be healthier, or I'd feel healthier. So I was finally small, but I just, as soon as I got to 210 pounds, I was like, I found out about jujitsu. Like I found out about it and started taking it. And I felt so frail and so weak. You know?
Because you had just been focusing on losing weight and not building muscle.
And nothing of that nature, right? So I could like, go to the gym and go to class and hang and stuff, but I was just always feeling like I was very frail and very weak. And I was like, okay, well, let's try to do this a different way. Let's try to like actually build muscle. Let's try to do this. Let's try to do that. And then like, as I started to switch back to like a normal diet and started to get like back on like a normal kind of like regular eating schedule involving carbs occasionally, or, introducing them slowly at first, I just noticed that like I was rapidly gaining weight back, and not only like rapidly gaining weight back, but it was all like going to like undesirable areas as opposed to being like well distributed out of my body. So like I had like small arms, but like a big stomach, or I'd have like small legs, but like smaller quads, but bigger like lower legs. Yeah. Just like a weird looking layout, right? So I was like, fuck, what's going on? And my sleep started to get worse. I would sleep like 9 hours, and then I'd wake up and feel like pretty good, start working, and like an hour later just have to go back to bed. And I was just like low energy all the time. So I started getting blood work, and the only number that was weird was the fact that like my testosterone was below 200, which is pretty fucking low. It's like on the lowest in the spectrum of low that like a man that age should be. Around this time, I'm like 25, 24. Yeah. And they're like, look, your body's in slingshot mode. It's whiplashing back and recovering from such a long time on like this, very specific diet. And now you've introduced all this new food back into your system. it's just going to take some time for your endocrine system to get used to this and start producing everything correctly again. So I lived like that for like 4.5 years.
Without thinking about changing the testosterone?
Well, I couldn't because of my doctor at the time would not prescribe it. He would not make the decision to prescribe it to a person that was this young. And he's a really good doctor, and I've had him for a very long time, so I like took his word for it. And I was a big believer in, like, at the time, like, I've definitely skirted the lines of legality with other substances that I've partaken in, especially around that time in my youth, right? But I lived like that for 4 or 5 years, and it was miserable. And in that time, like, all of my personal relationships kind of fell apart, and I like sabotaged a lot of friendships I had just because I couldn't devote any mental or physical energy to them. And the fact that I was able to train jiu-jitsu at all during this time period was pretty miraculous to me looking back, but I was training very sporadically, like not enough to actually see any kind of like improvement. Then at this time, COVID hit, as well as I had a knee injury, very severe knee injury that I needed a complete knee rebuild for, that I got doing jiu-jitsu. And Mac was like, I might be able to help you, you know, with all this stuff.
Help you in what?
Well, he just said that he had been working on something that could help me build muscle back around the area and help me put muscle back on, since my body was having so much trouble doing that. This was about 2 years before the trial. So he had an idea, but it wasn't concrete. So 2 years of me rehabbing my knee, going back to jiu-jitsu, and now my body's starting to get better and I'm starting to feel stronger. And I started working with my trainer, Greg. I started lifting weights, and I started actually paying attention to what I was doing, lifting the weights. And I used his program and the knees over toes guy, several other techniques of me just researching thoroughly on the internet. I learned my lesson, and now I like thoroughly vet everything as much as I can with research. Granted, I don't think that I'm like the most like scientifically literate person in the world. So sometimes I'm like trying to grasp at things, and then I'll text. That's one thing I love about being such good friends with Mac, is if I have a question about like something that I could ask a science teacher, I could just ask him. Yeah. You know, or sometimes even my primary care doctor, I'll just be like, I'm not going to ask my doctor. I text Mac. So Mac formally approached me about coming to Austin for South by Southwest about 2 years ago. He was like, I'm having a bunch of friends over. We're going to have this massive party. I want you to be there. You're my oldest friend. Wow. I was like, okay, I'll be there. And I had never been to Austin. And I was excited to see Mac because he moved to Austin like 7 or 8 years ago at this point. And I had only seen him like 2 or 3 times since that. Wow. Like he would come home and visit people, and I'd see him. He'd stop in, we'd have dinner. But like it wasn't like prolonged hanging out. And this is like me and him would hang out for like I told you last night, like 13 hours at a time, just in one room talking with the same album just playing on repeat, you know? So it was very shocking. It was like a very like a loss, you know, in my life. And it was happening around the same time that all these other like negative things were happening as well. So I came to Austin, and I walked into Mac's actual apartment where we were all staying. And I turned the corner, and the first person I saw when I got there was Tep. And we've been such good friends ever since. And I met Tristan, I met Walter, I met Alec, I met all of these people that would come to be involved with the trial. And I did not know this, but they were vetting me or courting me amongst each other. Like Mac was introducing Walter to me with the like, hey, do you think this guy would be a good candidate for the trial? And at the end of the weekend, I was like formally offered a chance to participate in the trial. Wow. And Max said, do you have any questions? I said, no, I'm in. And at the time I was like, just like I'm in. But then the more I thought about it, obviously I had questions, right? But he provided, you know, a lot of convincing information and studies and stuff like that. And I think that especially like being around Jacob and the guys here this weekend, I've learned that my supplement game is very lacking. Like I kind of just like drink protein shakes. And I did the trial, and it wasn't until like the trial happened that I fully became invested in my longevity and my health. And I have a skincare routine now, and that I've been taking certain supplements. I guess I do take certain supplements. I just didn't bring them on the trip. I take like ashwagandha and ginger and vitamin D and iron supplements sometimes, like if I feel like my immune system is kind of a little laggy or whatever. But yeah, it wasn't until I got the follistatin that I felt that the things I was doing on the mat and in the gym were actually like paying off enough to the point where I could focus on other areas and like be like, okay, well now I can start fine tuning this and this and this. So that fine tunement process you originally asked me about, it came, but it took a lot of like learning for me personally. I definitely don't think I'm like a person who picks up very quickly on information. When I perceive it, I have to experience the failure. I think that's one thing about jiu-jitsu that like has always kept me, is that like it's so much failure over and over and over again. It's failure and rejection and denial. It's like a practice in accepting all of those things over and over and over and over again. So when I run into it in other parts of life, it's like, I've dealt with this before, I can deal with this.
So what were the main effects that you noticed? So like you said, like you felt it on the mat when you were doing jiu-jitsu, but what else?
I felt it immediately. Well, not immediately after the therapy, but I felt it within a day or two of the therapy. And the first thing that I felt, I don't know if you've heard this from anyone else, but it was a ravenous hunger. Yeah. I mean, we went to a restaurant the next day and I must have eaten like 40 ounces of steak. I mean, I just kept eating soups and everybody at the table who had the therapy, because we had this dinner for everybody who was there, right? Everybody who was there was just like, yeah, I can't stop eating too. Like I can't stop eating myself. So I think that everybody kind of experienced some level of that. Yeah. And that kind of carried on a little bit. Like my appetite definitely did stay a little like dialed up from where it normally is for about 3 or 4 months. That was the main one. Secondary side effects immediately. I experienced better sleep, but I didn't experience like a ton of extra energy. I experienced just like slightly better undisturbed sleep. And then going to the gym, I noticed like rapid, almost scary improvements in strength very fast, right? So, like I said, I work with a personal trainer, Greg Martinez, and he's a very, in my area where I live, he's a very highly regarded professional trainer. And he's worked with a lot of athletes. And the jumps that we were seeing week to week on like bench press, deadlift, squat, were almost like alarming to him. Wow. And this is a guy who's coached guys that are on HGH and TRT and this stuff. But that big explosion of strength didn't last extremely long, maybe 2 or 3 months. So I really pushed it during that 2 to 3 months. And when I first started the trial, I was almost a year into lifting weights, and I could lift weights pretty hard 3 times a week and just recover in time to do more. Yeah. After I got follistatin, I stepped it up. I was able to step it up to 5 times a week. Wow. And that's like my current regimen as well.
And so did you notice like there's like a peak time to gain muscle after the initial injection?
I thought so. I've experienced a significant loss in that otherworldly type of strength around the 3-month mark or the 90-day mark. But I was monitoring everything a little bit closer than I normally would. Right. Like I was so invested in the results that I really kept track of stuff. So like, for instance, this is going to sound like a low number to some people who may end up watching this, but you got to keep in mind, I never lifted weights and I was very weak coming into weightlifting. But before I went to Roatan, my bench was only like 185. Within 3 weeks, I was pushing 265. Wow. So, and now, and the highest I hit was right around the 80-day mark. I was able to pump like 315 for 3. And that was it. And now my current PR right now is like 280 max. Yeah. So like I still have yet to get back to where I was on FST right now, personally.
So where is everything today?
Everything today is really good. I mean, I don't think that the follistatin helped in any regard with like the strength of my knee or the balance of my knee, but I do think it was helpful in that first 90 days to build up all of this muscle around the actual knee cap and the like basically what holds the knee all in the same place, right? And I had a full ACL, MCL, PCI. They had to shave off this part of my knee to make it fit back together because it was like shattered in the middle and pulled apart. So it was a very extensive surgery. And the muscle that I gained during the FST trial was enough to where I can confidently like wrestle and roll jujitsu, and I don't have to really worry about.
And I saw you roll the other day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as far as like my strength goes, I enjoy weightlifting. I have a lot of friends who compete in weightlifting, and I don't think I'll ever compete in weightlifting. I think I just want to see how far I can push it. But also when the trials were like officially at the 1 year mark, I got the green flag from Mac to start taking TRT. So I started on that. And
what's
then
TRT?
Testosterone replacement therapy. So I didn't mention the caveat to my story earlier about my scores. Even when I was on FST, my scores never went above 235 or 240. So for a long time, my body did produce minimal, if suboptimal levels of testosterone. And that's what was causing all of those
other problems,
right? And I wasn't officially diagnosed with hypergonadism because they couldn't distinctly say that's what it was. I think obviously it was like my endocrine system just crashed from that intense dieting experience, and it just never recovered. But no matter what I did, no matter what I changed my diet to, clean eating, even tried vegetarian for a while, dairy-free for a while.
Just couldn't do it.
Just nothing was really working in a way that would allow me to build muscle and keep fat off or keep fat down.
But with TRT, have you noticed a change, or is that just recent?
Yeah, so I've got regular DEXAs throughout the trial, and at the peak of like the end of the wrap, before I went on TRT of the trial, I had gained 20 pounds of lean muscle. And I had lost 13 pounds of fat. Sheesh. And then after 6 months on TRT, that number had gone up to 30 pounds of lean muscle, and the body fat had gone up to 17. I'd lost 17% of body fat.
Wow.
The guy who did my DEXA, and I guess Jacob and I found out that we go to the same guy, but he was pretty impressed by the bone density.
Wow.
Aspect of it, but he was like, when you have a DEXA, everything's color coded, and red is like, super lean muscle. And he just laid over the two on top of each other, and there was just like so much more red in it.
So, like, who would you recommend this gene therapy for?
I definitely know a lot of people in the martial arts community that are between the ages of 35 and 45 that are world champion athletes and want to continue to be world champion athletes. And I think this is a good thing for them to partake in because it doesn't have the side effects that comes with a steroid, doesn't have the stigma that comes with a steroid. It's producing something that is naturally found in the body in a pretty acceptable level. Steroid use in jiu-jitsu is just completely out of control. In the words of James Smith, who I met this weekend, who's very nice, he says, the steroids are a reliable option, but they are a nuclear option.
Right.
I don't feel that follistatin is a nuclear option because it can be turned off because of all of these other aspects of it. Because of the fact that I myself experienced 0 negative side effects, and everyone that I know personally who was in the trial said the same thing. I would say that the people who can benefit most from it are the people who are experiencing that like first wave of athletic degradation. But obviously, my best friend is my grandmother, and I would love for her to be part of follistatin as well. And I've heard that there's a gentleman who's 81 in the trial who had extremely good results. So I don't know all the data right now because obviously none of us do except maybe Mac and maybe Tep. But I'm hoping that when I see the data, I can answer that question more effectively.
Super exciting world we're going to.
Absolutely. The future is on the way.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast 5 stars, and share with a friend. If you have any questions or comments, DM us at Finding Founders Podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Finding Founders is produced and hosted by me, Samuel Donner.
Our audio editing team lead is Ashley Jimenez, with support from
Jessica Morales, Miley Lipton,
Siyu Pan,
Kenny Ray,
Josie Yo,
Matt Fernandez,
and Merritt Hill.
Our outreach and research team lead is Desiree Nunez, with support from Marissa Granados, Monica Lee,
Sarah Tiersma,
and Yao Will.
To see more of what we're up to, subscribe to our newsletter at findingfounders.co. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.